Welcome back to Revenge Plus, where revenge isn't just sweet, it's unforgettable. Let's dive into today's unforgettable story. I'm not giving you a single cent, it all goes to your sister. That's what my mother told me, stone-faced, while holding our father's will in her trembling hands. I stared at her, speechless, not because I was surprised she was favoring my sister again, no, I was used to that. But because I already knew something that she didn't, a secret I had kept for years. A secret that would turn this whole thing upside down. I should have felt hurt. I should have cried or begged her to reconsider. But instead, I smiled. You're probably wondering, how can a daughter smile after being betrayed by her own mother during the most crucial moment of her life? Well, let me take you back. Because this didn't start with a will. This started way before. From the outside, we looked like a perfectly average American family, 2 daughters, a modest house in the suburbs, and Sunday church every weekend. But inside those walls there was a quiet war. My name is Claire, and I'm the younger one. Ever since I can remember, my older sister, Jennifer, was always the golden child. She didn't have to try. Everything she did was praised like she was some kind of miracle. When she got a B on a test, Mom would say, "Well, at least you tried." When I got an A, she'd just nod and go, "What about extra credit?" Jennifer got the bigger bedroom, the first bike, the first phone, and I got used to being invisible. I thought it was just my imagination, maybe I was being dramatic. But one day, when I was 14, I overheard my mother on the phone with her friend. She laughed and said, "Jennifer's always been special. Claire's well, she's just there." That night something broke inside me. And something else started growing, not hatred, no, something colder, something sharper. I promised myself that one day I'd make her see me, not just see me, respect me. Fast forward to a year ago. My father passed away suddenly. He wasn't perfect, but he was the only one who made me feel like I mattered. At the funeral, my mother didn't cry. Jennifer gave a speech full of fake tears, acting like she was the closest to him, and I stood there knowing something they didn't. Because 2 months before his death, he had called me into his study. He looked tired. He said, "Claire, I know things haven't been fair, I see it. I regret not standing up for you more, that's why I've changed my will." Those words echoed in my head as I watched my mother clutch a different version of that will. The one Jennifer probably helped her draft after his death. So yes, when she said I'd get nothing, I smiled, because my father left another copy, the real one, and that copy had something she could never undo. But why did my mother hate me so much in the first place? Why did she cling to Jennifer like she was the only daughter worth loving? What kind of mother looks into her child's eyes and sees nothing? You see, most people think betrayal comes from enemies. But no, the most painful ones come from those who should have loved you. And as I watched her gloat, basking in her sense of control, I realized. She had no idea that I had been preparing for this moment. No idea that the girl she used to dismiss like background noise was about to become the storm that would change everything. But before the storm hits, let me show you who I was really up against. And believe me, Jennifer wasn't just the favorite. She was the weapon my mother used to keep me small. How do you fight against 2 people who have made your whole life feel like a mistake? Stick around, because I didn't just fight. I played their game better than they ever imagined. Jennifer wasn't just the favorite, she was the masterpiece my mother sculpted with surgical precision. Every strand of her hair, every word she spoke, every fake smile she flashed, all part of an image carefully built for admiration. And I'll admit it, for a long time it worked. Everyone loved her. Teachers, neighbors, even my father in the early days, but I saw behind the curtain. I lived with her, and I knew what she really was. When we were kids, she used to do this thing. She'd take something of mine, like a necklace or a notebook, and when I asked for it back, she'd scream, "Mom, Claire's being mean to me again." And like clockwork, my mother would storm in, not even asking what happened, and snap, "Claire, stop bothering your sister." I'd be punished. Sent to my room, sometimes grounded for days. And Jennifer, she'd wink at me behind Mom's back. That smug little smirk burned itself into my memory. She was manipulative before she could even spell the word. And as we got older, her tactics just evolved. She stole my crush in high school not because she liked him, but because she overheard me say I did. A week later, she was holding his hand in the cafeteria while I sat 2 tables away pretending it didn't matter. But what hurt most wasn't the betrayal. It was that my mother looked at her with so much pride, whispering, "Look at my beautiful girl. Of course he chose you." Then came college. Jennifer was given a car. I got a bus pass. She failed 2 semesters and my mother blamed her professors. I graduated early with honors and she didn't even show up at my ceremony. I remember standing there in my cap and gown, looking at all the families cheering, and my seat was empty. Just like always. Still, I kept quiet. I tried to be the bigger person. I told myself one day life would even the scales. But then came the ultimate betrayal. A few years ago, I found out I had been accepted into a prestigious art residency overseas, something I'd been working toward for years. I came home, trembling with excitement, holding the acceptance letter. Before I could even finish reading it aloud, Jennifer said, "Oh, so you'll just leave Mom all alone here. After everything she's done for us." She turned to our mother with those practiced puppy eyes and said, "I'd never leave you like that." And just like that, the guilt bomb exploded. My mother broke into tears, performance tears of course, and said, "You're right, Claire's always been selfish." They guilted me into turning it down. My dream, gone. That was the moment something inside me truly snapped. That was the day I stopped trying to be understood and started planning instead. But before I tell you how I built my plan, you need to know one more thing, the most twisted part of this entire story. Something that still makes my skin crawl. My mother wasn't just favoring Jennifer out of blind love. No, it was darker than that. She saw Jennifer as an extension of herself, the daughter she believed reflected her beauty, her charm, her legacy. And me, I was the mistake, the leftover. She once told me during an argument, "When I look at you, I see every regret I've ever had." She didn't love Jennifer more. She needed her more to feel important, to feel admired. And when Jennifer echoed her vanity, her bitterness, her need to control, she saw herself. Once, when my father was still alive, I heard him say, "You're turning Jennifer into you. That's not love, that's possession." She didn't speak to him for 3 days after that. So you see, Jennifer wasn't the mastermind. She was the weapon. A willing one, yes, but a weapon nonetheless. Sharpened by a mother who didn't want daughters, she wanted mirrors. But mirrors can crack, and cracks, they spread. After my father passed, the vultures circled fast. Jennifer immediately moved into the house, even before the funeral dust had settled. She claimed it was to help Mom cope, but I saw the truth. She was securing her territory. I tried to grieve, truly I did. I missed my father more than I could say. But grief had to take a backseat because the war had begun. And this time I wasn't going to sit in silence and wait to be crushed. It was Jennifer who brought up the will first. She acted like she was just the messenger, reading from it with fake reluctance. "Dad left everything to Mom," she said. "And when the time comes, it'll be passed to me to manage it, of course." She even had the audacity to pat my hand and say, "But don't worry, Claire, we'll take care of you." Take care of me, like a stray dog. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, because by then I had already made the phone call. You see, that night my father called me into his study. He didn't just change the will. He gave me a copy. He trusted me with it. But he also warned me. He knew my mother would try something. "If anything happens to me," he said, "don't let them bury the truth." So I didn't. I hired a lawyer. Quietly, carefully, I made sure everything was in place. I didn't just want justice. I wanted them to feel helpless, like I had felt for 27 years, but I wasn't reckless. No, this time I was patient. I waited, watched. And when they finally tried to cut me out, that was my cue. Now you might ask, why didn't I confront them immediately? Why let the charade continue? Because I needed them to believe they had won. I needed them to show their true selves. And oh, they did. My mother started redecorating the house with Dad barely cold in the ground. Jennifer opened a new boutique with money she claimed came from savings. They were so busy celebrating, they didn't see the storm clouds gathering. But storms don't ask for permission. They just arrive. And mine was almost here. I still remember the day I walked into my father's study for the last time before he died. The air smelled like cedarwood and old paper, his favorite jazz record playing faintly in the background. He didn't smile when he saw me. He looked tired. Not in the way old people look when life has run its course, but the kind of tired that comes from regret. From carrying secrets for too long. "Claire," he said, gesturing for me to sit, "there's something I need you to have." That was when he pulled out the envelope. Not just a letter, it was a copy of his updated will. It named me as the sole heir to his personal savings, his retirement fund, and his private art collection. The house, he said, could go to my mother for now. But everything else, he was clear, "This is yours." I'm doing what I should have done years ago. I blinked, stunned. "Why are you doing this?" He exhaled deeply. "Because I know your mother and sister, and I know what they're capable of. I've seen it. I stayed silent for too long. But I see you now, Claire. I always did. I was just too weak to show it." That moment, his tired voice, his trembling hand placing the papers in mine, lit something in me. It wasn't just validation, it was power. The kind of power I never knew I could hold. I didn't tell anyone about the will, I kept it hidden. And not just the copy, I had the original signed document witnessed by his lawyer. It was official, legal, airtight. But I also knew something else. My mother would never accept that. And Jennifer? She would fight me tooth and nail, not because she needed the money, but because losing to me would mean losing the image of herself as the one who always wins. So I made a decision. I wouldn't just walk in with the will and declare victory. That would be too easy. I would make them show the world who they really were. The first step was silence. I let them gloat. I let them redecorate, spend, laugh. I let Jennifer take Mom on shopping sprees, sipping wine while calling me the poor one behind my back. I even played along, acted a little stunned, a little quiet. They thought they'd broken me. But while they were busy celebrating, I was busy collecting. I started digging. Emails, receipts, financial records. I remembered Jennifer bragging years ago that she helped Mom transfer Dad's stocks early to avoid estate taxes. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. But now I realized it might have been illegal. I found the paper trail. Invoices, wire transfers, and a document with Jennifer's digital signature on an account that wasn't hers. My father's account. She'd been siphoning money even before he died. And it wasn't just Jennifer. My mother had been using Dad's insurance policy to invest in a luxury condo downtown in her own name. She hadn't disclosed it in the initial will reading because it wasn't supposed to exist. She was hiding assets. That was my leverage, but I didn't rush. I met with a lawyer I trusted, someone far from my mother's social circle. I showed him everything, the real will, the hidden assets, the embezzlement. His response? This isn't just inheritance fraud, this could be a criminal case. But I didn't want jail. No, that would be too clean. I wanted exposure. Humiliation. I wanted the masks to come off. So I made a plan, one that would if that revenge hit just right, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more epic comebacks and justice-served stories. Drop a comment below. I'd love to know what you would have done in their place. Fold quietly, piece by piece. First, I filed a formal contest of the will, not in a dramatic courtroom scene but through private channels. It would take weeks to process. I made sure of that. I wanted the delay. Time was part of the trap. Next, I hired a forensic accountant, someone discreet, someone sharp, to prepare a report. It outlined every shady financial move Jennifer and my mother had made over the past 5 years. It was more than enough to make them panic if it ever went public. But the best part? I found out something even juicier. My father had been secretly supporting a scholarship fund in my name. He'd kept it hidden, waiting for the right time to reveal it. After his death, the payments stopped. I followed the trail and discovered my mother had canceled it, rerouting the funds to a family trust controlled by Jennifer. That was it, that was the final piece. I now had the real financial evidence of theft, proof of asset concealment, a cut scholarship meant for me. And still, I waited, because what I needed next wasn't paperwork, it was emotion. I needed them to look me in the eye while thinking they'd won. So I invited them to dinner. A family dinner, just the 3 of us, at my apartment. Jennifer showed up in designer heels, her hair perfect, her voice dripping fake concern. Mom walked in like she was entering a courtroom she already owned. "Claire," she said, settling into my couch, "we know this is hard for you, but your father trusted me to handle things." I poured her a glass of wine and said nothing. Jennifer leaned forward. "You've always been different, that's okay. We still love you even if you can't handle responsibility." The words stung not because they were true, but because they were so rehearsed. Like lines from a play they'd performed 100 times before. I smiled politely and said, "You're right, I've been quiet too long." Then I reached under the coffee table and pulled out a folder. Leather-bound, thick. "What's that?" my mother asked. I slid it across to her. "Just something Dad left behind. I think you'll find it enlightening." Jennifer opened it first. She flipped the pages, her eyes narrowing, her smile froze. "What is this?" she asked, voice shaking. I leaned back. "That's the real will, signed, dated, witnessed, legal." My mother snatched it from her and skimmed it quickly, her face draining of color. That's not possible, You had a forgery," I cut in. "And forged documents don't hold up in court." For a moment no one spoke. The silence was delicious, then Jennifer exploded. "You planned this, you manipulated Dad before he died." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that your story?" "Because I have emails showing you accessed his accounts without authorization. Want to see those too?" I placed another file on the table. My mother tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. "Claire, this doesn't have to go public." We can fix this. Can we? I asked, because I also found the cancelled scholarship, the one in my name, the one you buried. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I stared at her, calm now. You took everything from me. My chances, my dreams, my dignity, and I let you for years, but not anymore. I stood up, walked to the door. You should go, my lawyer will be in touch. As they left, Jennifer fuming, my mother pale and trembling, I felt a strange peace. Not triumph, not yet, but balance. The scale had finally tipped, and I still hadn't even gone public. 2 days after the dinner, Jennifer showed up at my office. Not my apartment, not a phone call. She marched right into the building where I worked, bold as ever, like she still thought she could control the outcome with just her presence. She wore her usual armor. Expensive heels, a blazer that probably cost more than my rent, and that perfect shade of red lipstick that always screamed power. But this time her hands were shaking. You're not really going to go through with this, she hissed, stepping into the hallway just outside my office. Think about Mom, think about the family. The word family hung there like a bad joke. I looked her dead in the eye. You mean the family that erased me? She clenched her jaw. We can make this right, we'll give you something, a share, 10%. I laughed, not out of humor, more like disbelief. You're negotiating like it's a business deal. This isn't about money anymore, it never really was. And it was true. If I had only cared about the money, I could have taken the documents to court and walked away with more than my share. But I wanted something else. I wanted them to feel it, every lie, every manipulation, every time they made me feel like a guest in my own home. So no, I didn't want their hush money, I wanted consequences. That evening, I sent the documents to my lawyer and greenlit the motion to freeze all disputed assets. Jennifer's boutique, funded through siphoned money from my father's trust. The boutique's bank accounts were now flagged for investigation. Her credit card was declined the next day at a charity gala. She had to leave early. I heard she cried in the parking lot. 1 week later, the lawyer representing the estate contacted me. The forged will had been invalidated. My father's original will, the one naming me as the main heir, was now the standing document. Legally, I had every right to the savings, the investments, and most of the personal property. But I still didn't move into the house. Not yet. I let my mother sit in it a little longer, watching everything fall apart from the inside. Every time she tried to withdraw money from her retirement fund, she was blocked. She called me once, just once, and left a message that began calmly but spiraled into screaming by the end. I didn't call her back. Instead, I made a visit. It was raining. I rang the doorbell and stood there, soaking wet, holding a small envelope. She opened the door slowly, surprised, wary. "Claire," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just came to return this," I said, handing her the envelope. Inside was a photo, the three of us, me, her, and Dad. I was maybe 8 years old, squished between them, beaming. She was mid-laugh. He had his arm around both of us. "I used to keep this under my pillow," I told her. Before I realized it was all fake. Her eyes darted to the photo, then back to me. "I didn't mean." "I know," I cut in. "That's the problem, you never meant anything, you just existed in your own little world, where love was conditional." She said nothing. I turned and walked away, not waiting for an apology I knew would never come. That same week, I moved the rest of my father's artwork to a secure gallery. I started restoring pieces he'd kept in storage for years, some that had my initials carved faintly in the corner from when I was a kid. Each painting was a quiet rebellion. Each brushstroke felt like healing. But there was still one thing left to do. See, while the legal side was settled, the public didn't know what had happened. My mother and Jennifer still had a reputation in the community, polished, charitable, adored. So I sent one more package. It went to the board of the charity Jennifer co-chaired. Inside were the financial records, funds rerouted, falsified donations, and a full audit from my forensic accountant. I didn't sign the letter. I didn't need to. A week later, Jennifer stepped down from the board for personal reasons. The boutique closed quietly. My mother's invitations to local fundraisers stopped coming. Was it petty? Maybe, but it felt like justice. And through it all, I never raised my voice. I never screamed or begged or stormed into rooms demanding what I was owed. I outsmarted them. I waited. I planned. And when the time was right, I turned their own weapons back on them: lies, image, control. They built a kingdom of mirrors. I shattered every one. But even with everything falling apart around them, they still hadn't hit bottom. It started with a letter. A formal one, printed on crisp white paper and sealed in a heavy envelope, not the kind of mail you ignore. It came from the district attorney's office. The moment Jennifer received it, she panicked. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard she called my mother 6 times in a row, sobbing. Apparently, she had no idea the documents I submitted had triggered an investigation into financial misconduct. And now the state was involved. See, I didn't just want them humiliated in private. I wanted accountability. Real accountability. My lawyer had advised me cautiously, if you hand this to the DA, they might pursue charges. I nodded, good. Jennifer had forged my father's name on transfer forms. That's a felony. My mother had deliberately concealed assets during probate, also illegal. They thought the game ended when the will was exposed. But that was just the first act. The DA's office launched a quiet inquiry at first, contacting the banks, freezing the boutique's remaining accounts, cross-checking wire transfers. I stayed silent through it all. I didn't need to gloat. I'd already played my move. Now it was the law's turn. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, subpoenas. They were both served within the same week. Jennifer at her apartment, in front of her neighbors, no less. My mother in her bathrobe, humiliated at her own front door. The same front door I used to walk through, small and silent, hoping not to be noticed. Poetic, isn't it? They were called in for questioning separately. And just like I predicted, the moment Jennifer felt pressure, she cracked. She threw my mother under the bus faster than I thought possible. Claimed she only did what Mom told her to. Claimed she was just following orders. But the emails and transactions said otherwise. The DA's office now had evidence of collusion, misappropriation of estate funds, and tax fraud. It was no longer just a family feud. It was a legal battle they were utterly unprepared for. And me, I stayed quiet, professional, calm. I didn't need to lift a finger anymore. Everything was already in motion. Then something unexpected happened. My mother sent me a letter, not an email, not a voicemail, a handwritten letter. It was shaking, barely legible in some parts. She said she was sorry things had gotten this far, that she never meant to hurt me, and that family shouldn't destroy each other. She begged me to drop the charges. I read that line over and over. Charges, like I was the one pressing them. As if this wasn't the natural consequence of their own actions. As if I had created this storm when all I did was pull back the curtain. I didn't write back. Instead, I forwarded the letter to my lawyer. See, this wasn't about revenge anymore, not really. It was about truth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being silenced. I wasn't the one being painted as dramatic, unstable, or ungrateful. The facts were on my side. The law was on my side. The next week, Jennifer's lawyer reached out with a desperate offer, drop the case, and they'd agree to a full public apology, restitution of all the stolen funds, and her permanent removal from all family-related financial matters. They'd even put it in writing. I stared at the offer. It was everything I could have wanted a year ago. But now I wanted more. I wanted this on record, so I refused the deal. And then the story broke. A local news outlet picked up the story. Family inheritance scandal rocks charity board. They didn't mention names directly, but everyone knew. Jennifer disappeared from social media. My mother withdrew from every community event she once lorded over like a queen. I heard whispers that people stopped inviting her places, that neighbors avoided her at the market. That Jennifer lost her lease on the boutique space because her landlord didn't want the negative attention. They called it cruel, overkill, but they never lived my life. They never sat in a room full of people who looked through you like you didn't exist. They never heard their own mother say, "You'll never be like her," and then smile like that was normal. So no, I didn't feel cruel, I felt free. And what happened next wasn't just justice, it was transformation. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about collapse, it's quiet at first. A missed call here, a cancelled event there, whispers replacing applause. Jennifer was the first to fall. Her boutique, once praised in local fashion blogs, shut down quietly. The sign was removed overnight. Her so-called friends stopped returning calls. I saw her once, weeks later in a grocery store, no makeup, sunglasses on, pushing a half-empty cart like she was trying to disappear. She looked right at me, then looked away. No words. Next came the money. With the real will enforced, all the funds she'd stolen and spent had to be repaid. She sold her car, moved into a smaller apartment. And when the restitution deadline passed, her credit tanked. No more luxury, no more power, but the worst collapse was my mother's. She lost her grip on everything. The house, the community standing, the illusion. At first, she tried to pretend nothing had changed, baking cookies for neighbors who no longer knocked. Attending church alone, but her name had been tainted. People talked. And when the silence grew louder than the gossip, she stopped going out altogether. The last I heard, she spends her days in the garden. Alone, no Jennifer, no visitors, just her and the weight of everything she tried to bury. Funny, isn't it? They spent years making me feel invisible. Now the world had turned its back on them. Some people think revenge is about destruction, tearing others down, watching them crumble. But for me, it was never really about that. It was about something quieter, something harder, reclaiming the version of myself they tried so hard to erase. After everything, I didn't throw a party, I didn't celebrate, I just exhaled. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was shrinking to fit into someone else's shadow. I kept the house. Not because I needed it, but because it was mine now, not theirs. I turned my father's study into an art studio. The same room where he handed me the truth became the space where I built my new beginning. I started painting again, not for galleries, not for approval, just for me. One of my first pieces was a portrait. A girl standing at the edge of a cliff, wind in her hair, looking out at the ocean. Her face wasn't angry. It wasn't broken. It was calm, unshaken, whole. It was me. I started volunteering at a local community center, teaching art classes to kids who'd been told, just like I had, that they didn't matter. One girl, maybe 9 years old, once looked up at me after finishing a messy, chaotic watercolor and whispered, "Is it okay that it's not perfect?" I smiled. "It's beautiful because it's yours." I saw myself in her. I saw all the parts of me that had once been told to be quiet, to be less, to be invisible. That's when I realized the greatest revenge was never their ruin. It was my rise. My mother and sister taught me how to survive, how to read silence, how to fight without screaming. They taught me what power really is and how easily it slips through the fingers of those who abuse it. But now I get to choose who I become. And if you're watching this, wondering whether to stay quiet or speak up, wondering if you'll ever be seen, or if the pain is just yours to carry, I want you to hear this. You are not invisible. You are not weak. You are not the story they wrote about you. You can rewrite every page. All it takes is one truth, one step forward, one moment when you decide that the past doesn't get to define the rest of you. That's what I did. And I've never looked back.